In this episode, Golden and I discuss the recent seasons of DC's Arrowverse TV shows. Full speed ahead. Welcome to the Omega Beam number 42. I'm your host, Orren Merton. And this episode, we're covering about 4 TV shows in one because the Arrowverse just finished the seasons for all 4 of their shows. Now, for those of you who don't know what the Arrowverse is, here's the really quick explanation. Around 7 years ago or so, TV producer Greg Berlanti created a superhero program called Arrow that was based on the DC Comics superhero Green Arrow. And they used that show to launch a bunch of other shows. So in Arrow, they introduced The Flash, they introduced White Canary and Atom, and all these other heroes, which then went on to their own shows. So we watched 3 of these 4 shows, and we're going to touch on all 4. For those who haven't seen them all, there are spoilers, not a ton, but there are some spoilers, so keep that in mind. In the USA, you can watch these on the CW network. Internationally, I believe they're on Netflix and maybe other streaming services as well. So without further ado, here's what we thought about the Arrowverse program. I'm here with Golden to talk about the CW's Arrowverse superhero shows.
Sans Arrow.
Sans Arrow. I have a lot of respect for what Arrow has accomplished. I mean, the entire universe really was set up through the show Arrow, hence the name Arrowverse. But I got to admit, I kind of lost interest. I started watching this season, which is season 7 for Arrow. I started watching it and then I stopped. It's just, I really enjoyed the original team and their interaction together. I thought they had some great villains and some great stories. I thought that John Barrowman was a great sort of bad guy / anti-hero as Malcolm Merlyn, who was the bad guy, but then he was helping him when it worked for him. And I thought it created some really great dynamics, but just as the seasons went on, I thought it just got convoluted and everything else. But I always thought it looked great. I thought that the stunt coordination was fantastic on that show. Just great action sequences. But I just stopped watching it.
Yeah, maybe you'll watch it next season.
Yeah, there's only 10 left for next season. And
I'm a little bit further back than you because I got caught up to the point that we met. And then you went a little bit further with watching it, but I didn't.
Right.
Because I just had a lot of other things that were going on, and that was one that I didn't keep track of or keep up with.
Exactly. And I kept telling you with so many shows you wanted to be up to date with that Arrow was not one you needed to because it was just getting blah. And you know, I think Stephen Amell is a fantastic superhero. I think he's a great Arrow. I love the way all the other shows, well, we should the caveat there is that Supergirl is in the Arrowverse kind of via a side door, that they need to go into the multiverse and go into the Earth that Supergirl is on because it started on CBS instead of the CW before it moved to the CW. So they needed to come up with a way to link them all together.
That was an easy way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one that works in story, I think, as well.
Yes, definitely.
So, you know, all cheers to Arrow, but we didn't watch it, so we're not going to talk about that.
Well, any more than we have just now.
Right. I think after the first couple episodes of this season where I kind of went peace out.
Apparently we're still adding just a little bit more.
I think the only one I watched was the crossover because I love the crossovers.
Crossovers are great.
Yeah. So
even when not all of them are included in the crossover, it's still great because they say, well, are we missing the crossover this year?
That's right. DC's Legend of Tomorrow, which we'll get to, is just just awesome, and they're very meta, and it's very cool. So the first of the spin-offs was Flash on season 5. So I thought we'd start talking about our thoughts on season 5 of Flash. Overall, I do think it was a very enjoyable season. It was a little bit uneven. I thought there were some shows that I wasn't so crazy about. One of my pet peeves is when characters do stupid things just to move the plot. There have been seasons of Flash where literally Barry has to act like an idiot to move the plot, and I hate that. There was a little bit of that this season, but it was normally wrapped up that episode rather than it being a plot point that they need for a few episodes. So, yeah, I think this was a good season. I do think that the main cast, I love them. I think Grant Gustin truly inhabits the role of the Flash. And the rest of the cast, I think, is great. I think that they got Chris Klein to play
Cicada.
Cicada, the big bad, for most of the arc. I don't know if it was the direction of the creative team.
It was a little too just drama for drama's sake. Gonna milk this.
He was so overly melodramatic in everything he was doing.
It was hard to care for the character.
Right. It was hard to take him seriously. It's fine if your show is a joke to have someone clearly chewing up the scenery and just.
If he was on DC's Legends of Tomorrow, he would fit right in.
Exactly, because in DC's Legends of Tomorrow, they have a puppet as one of the main villains. So you gotta love that. But Flash tries to be a little bit more grounded than that. Even though they also play with the humor and they keep it lighter than Arrow, they do try and be a little bit more gritty. And so I think that, that was a little bit much. I think Arrow generally has very good effects. And I think this was no exception, that the effects were generally very good for TV.
One of the other things that I was disappointed with was the Flash's costume.
The suit.
I felt like they took a step back with the suit. I felt that all the other times the suit fit him very well. This one just didn't seem to really fit him, and I just felt like the suit just did not fit him very well. I felt like it made it look very comic-y in a not so appreciated comic book way.
Yeah, I agree that they definitely tried to go much more comic booky. Even early in the season, they had what is in the comics where his suit is in a ring. And so they had that ring where he basically pops out the costume from a ring and then just, at super speed, puts it on and is off to go. So that I liked, but I do think that they made it look more sort of felty and sort of randomly patched together.
I don't know. It just seemed kind of rubbered. And you already have Ralph Dibny. He's the rubber guy.
Right, the elongated man. Yeah, I think the whole team, it's always a little tricky when you play with the team, because when you have a team that works and you add or subtract people from it, you run the risk of blowing open the dynamic in not necessarily a good way. But I think that Hartley Sawyer as Ralph Dibny, the elongated man, I think he fit in really, really well.
And Tom Cavanaugh
he's amazing.
He's amazing. I think that next season, if he's only playing one character, it's going to be kind of sad because we're so used to seeing him in multiple roles in the season.
Right. I think the addition this season of Jessica Parker Kennedy as Nora was great. I loved her as a character. The actress, I think, did a great job. I think it speaks really well to the actress that she was older than both of the people playing her parents, and yet still you had
seemed 20 years younger.
Yeah, there was never a point that you felt, okay, this is silly. I like the fact that Tom Cavanaugh played both Eobard, Thawne, and Sherlock.
Sherlock.
That's right. The Wells from another Earth. One of the
who just happens to fall in love with this exact same woman on whatever Earth he's on.
Exactly. And I like Tom Cavanaugh so much that I was willing to forgive the fact that in season 1 of The Flash, they erased Eobard Thawne from history. Thawne from history. In season, I think 3, or was it 2?
So what you're saying is he just, no matter what, he is just a Thawne in their side.
Yeah. And he keeps, and it this time they didn't even attempt to really justify. The first time he came back in Legends of Tomorrow and was part of the, League of Villains, their excuse was, well, I really was erased from reality, but I'm a remnant and I'm trying to reposition myself as part of reality. So, okay, that makes a little bit of sense. This time they really didn't even try. There was one throwaway line that you can't get me in the negative Speed Force. And that was basically it.
Yeah, talking about roles and different characters and things like that. It was really interesting to see Jessica Parker Kennedy in such a drastic change from the role that I knew her from in Black Sails.
In Black Sails?
Yes.
Yeah.
Someone that was not so innocent and as Nora.
Yeah, that was a whole different character there.
I think that the cast is just very strong. You have all of these just wonderful characters. You have Danielle Nicolette playing Cecile, who was brought in late, but she's added so much of a little flavor to the series, and her standing next to her husband, and he's like this giant guy and she's this tiny little petite thing.
Right. But it works. Again, another example of...
They make a great partnership.
They do. And another example of playing with the core team, but it worked. I really like this season how, and this credit goes to the writers and also to Danielle Panabaker for how they've navigated the relationship between Caitlin Snow and Killer Frost, who is now just Frost because she's no longer a killer. But I love how now they can access each other. That it's no longer
a Jekyll and Hyde.
Right. Exactly. And I love that. I love that there's now just two people in a body.
And they really do care about each other.
Yes.
Neither one of them wants to be without the other.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they appreciate and they value the other person.
Absolutely. And I think that adds to the series. And I think that it's just another example of how the writers for this show get it right. And then the actors really pull it off.
And you have another person joining the cast with Chris Klein. And that is the one playing his grown-up daughter, Sarah Carter, who was playing Grace.
Right.
Grace.
Yeah.
And I remember her from Falling Skies, and she did an incredible job on Falling Skies.
Okay.
And I think she did an incredible job in this season.
Okay.
She wasn't over the top.
Yeah, well, she wasn't nearly as over the top as Chris Klein, her uncle. She was only in a number of episodes towards the end, but yeah, I mean, I think it picked up. I think that I was never crazy about Chris Klein. I never particularly liked to see him on screen, but I think when she showed up, it kind of picked up the big bad. So that was good. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I'm a little sad with the ending, with the fact that we don't have Vibe next season. That he chose to take the cure.
Oh, yeah.
And
I was going to say the actor's still there.
To me, it just seems like that was so much a part of him.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, we'll see where it goes.
And it doesn't mean that they can't come up with a anti-cure.
Right, the anti-cure.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll see. I agree. I mean, I would have been like, no, keep your powers. I appreciate that they're wanting to explore other story.
I see the characters usually he puts others in front of himself.
Yes.
And this is definitely something where he's putting himself in front of others.
Mm-hmm.
Because as Vibe, he does kind of put himself at risk and people he loves at risk. But he also is able to protect them.
Right.
And now they've just lost the ability to have him there and to have that little safety net that he provides.
Right. So we'll see where it goes next season.
We talked about all of these different characters and the cast and everything else, but we didn't really touch much on the story with like the dagger and the whole fact that you want to believe that Thawne actually has some good and that he wants the best for Nora. And there isn't any other thing that he wants from her. And then you find out, yeah, of course, there is something that he wants from her. He wants her to succeed because if she succeeds, it frees him. And even with that, towards the end, like, okay, yeah, Thawne's still the bad guy. But there's that he has still come to care for her.
And they end it on the note with him saying, see you at the next crisis. And the crossover for fall is Crisis on Infinite Earths, which we will get to in more detail as we go through, at least Supergirl, but other stories as well. So I think they set that up really well. I got the feeling that Thawne was hoping that ultimately he knew the way to save XS, to save Nora. And I think he was hoping that the Flash would save her. And the one thing he may not have counted for is that she didn't want to be saved. But we'll see. Because of course,
he would want to be saved.
Right. But we'll see, because all of these timelines are malleable. You know, this created a new timeline where Nora wasn't born, but that timeline can always be changed again. Because at the very end of the show, it pointed out that the 2024 forever vanishing of the Flash had now become the 2019 forever vanishing of the Flash as part of the Elseworlds. So we'll see. We'll see where that goes. So Supergirl, I love the cast. I think Melissa Benoist is amazing as Supergirl. I generally love the cast around her. I didn't really love the story. I know that Supergirl is more the issues show, that it's more the allegory towards what we're dealing with. And I appreciate that they wanted to talk about immigrants and immigration using aliens as the stand-in. I appreciate that they wanted to talk about overreach of government and fascism and all these other things that we Americans are dealing with. I don't think it was just done all that engagingly. And it left me cold a lot. And I mean, you know,
you had to kind of wonder at times which people are really the humans. Because some of the aliens act more human than some of the humans.
Sure, I'm sure.
You have the character of Ben Lockwood.
Right.
Who's like almost human. And it's like, is he trying to be human? Is he trying to be more than human? And I'm just putting in a joke there about the fact that he keeps trying to be human in a different series. But go ahead. So, back to Supergirl.
You know, the thing about Ben Lockwood is he was supposed to be your typical alt-right, amalgamation of all the people right now who are inciting violence and protesting and all this other stuff on Twitter and Facebook. And I appreciate that. But, you know, he was so mustache twirling. It became a farce. And I appreciate that the season wanted to show journalism as being so important because, here in America, journalists are under attack by the current government, being called the enemy of the people and fake news and everything. And so you had journalists being as heroic, if not more heroic, than the superhero. You literally had Supergirl at one point saying, the pen is mightier than the cape, in case it wasn't completely hammered home. Again, I appreciate they're trying to give that message, and I appreciate they're trying to give a message of equality. And I think all of that is good. I just felt that it could have been more engaging. Sometimes it was so on the nose. I appreciate that they have a trans superhero. I appreciate that Nicole Maines is playing Nia Nal, a dreamer, who's a trans superhero, a trans alien superhero. But it seemed like very often she would just sort of throw that piece of information out there for no particular reason, just to make her point. She'd be like, I'm an alien and I'm trans. It's like, okay, cool. But, that wasn't something that was important to the story. I mean, there was one episode, it was really important to the story. And I thought it was used incredibly well when she's talking to her sister, and her sister throws back at her that you're not even really a girl, and you can just see the hurt. And it was like, wow, this is, and that I thought it was used well, but so many other times it was just want to throw this in to show, that we're on the right side of ethics here.
The last half of the season picked up.
The last half did pick up. I agree.
And I know you had an issue with Alex Danvers not remembering her sister, and why did that really have to be like that? So, I get why they went that way, and you knew eventually she was going to have to remember. So you knew that eventually she was going to have to remember. It was just, how are they going to get there?
Sure. And speaking of the last half of the season picking up, for 3 episodes, they brought in John Cryer as Lex Luthor. I thought he was an excellent Lex Luthor.
Oh, and Andrea Brooks as Eve Tessmacher.
Oh, yeah.
She was phenomenal as well.
Mm-hmm.
She was phenomenal as soon as she took stage or joined the show.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think that they were wonderful additions. To talk about some things I didn't like. I thought the CG was generally good. Sometimes it was a little cheesy. I thought the sort of spiral drawn on effect of Dreamer's dream power blasts were a little cheesy.
They're allowed to be cheesy. It is a comic book.
Right. And it's
type
TV,
show,
so
and
I don't
TV.
expect Avengers Endgame level CG. Although one of the things that does kind of bug me about Supergirl, speaking of TV versus movies, I in our tiny little talk about Arrow, I had brought up how I thought the stunt coordination and the stunt direction is phenomenal, that they really get, almost Hong Kong kung fu level stunt direction on that show. The stunt direction on Supergirl is never very good. It always looks like they're just in slow motion saying, okay, throw your arm out. Okay, now we're going to pull you on a string. It never feels nearly as well choreographed or as kinetic as the other CW shows. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why they don't just hire a stunt coordinator who has just a better sort of feel for what you can do in a television setting.
So I decided to look up Sam Witwer.
Okay.
Who was playing Ben Lockwood.
Okay.
So not only is he the voice of Darth Maul and Palpatine and a lot of different things, but also was one of the cast of Smallville.
Yeah.
For 22 episodes. So now instead of hanging out with Superman, he's
hanging out with Supergirl. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mentioned that, and I wanted to kind of double back to what you had already brought up. One of my sort of, when we're talking about pet peeves, is how secret identities are handled, because we all know that it's silly. It's just silly. It's like they put glasses on Superman, and suddenly nobody knows Clark Kent is Superman. It's one of those things where you understand how people casually aren't going to know that this person is a superhero. but people who know them well, you'd think would figure it out. So an example of handling it really well, I thought, was one of the resolutions in The Flash was the captain is promoted to chief of police, which is well deserved. He's been a great character for all these years. And in that last, when he's talking and giving the job of captain to Flash's dad, and he's saying, "You'll have all the help you need, and don't worry if you feel overwhelmed. You'll have all the help you need." Isn't that right, Flash? You can see Barry Allen is like he's about to try and deny it. He's like, "Huh? What?" And he's like, "Come on, I'm a detective. You think I couldn't figure this out?" And he just sort of goes, and Grant Gustin plays it so well. He just sort of, you see
the characters. Cecile's character's there.
Uh-huh.
So you have the Cecile character. You have Joe.
Right, Joe's there.
And they don't really say anything.
Right, they don't say anything. Barry, and you can see, I love Grant Gustin in this part. You can see playing on his face, he's like, do I deny it? He really knows it's me. I can trust him. I don't need to deny it. And he just kind of shrugs like, yeah. But to me, that's the way you do it. I think Flash gives you the way you do it so well.
That's the problem I've had with Supergirl.
Right.
And that's a problem that we've discussed, is that Lena Luthor has got to have figured it out.
She's got to be brilliant. I mean, she's a brilliant woman.
Brilliant.
And yet she's never figured this out.
How she's never figured that out, I just don't think that they're giving the character credit. Right. And now, okay, well, everyone's lying to you.
Right. Now it's been brought to her attention. And
they're trying to make it seem like everyone is laughing behind her back when all they're trying to do is protect her.
Right. So, I don't like the way it played out there. I don't like the subplot where, oh my God, you have to erase my memories so I don't remember you're my sister, or else they might force me to reveal your identity. It's like, no, that's just
But
silly.
We do like that Brainiac is taken over by basically the evil Brainiac.
That was done well.
And in order to bring him back, Dreamer needs him.
Right.
And so he overcomes himself.
Right.
To be with her.
And
to support her.
And that actor, Jesse Rath, I mean, I already mentioned, I think the acting is wonderful. And he does a bang-up job. He has to play basically a biological android who's dealing with emotions and love and all these other things for the first time and can feel emotions, but has all this completely cold, emotionless programming. And I thought the way he dealt with that was done really, really well.
And he's naive as to what he's supposed to be saying and what he's not supposed to be saying, which adds humor when he does say something and everyone's eyes go wide, like, you really weren't supposed to say that in front of this other person. Exactly. Or what are you talking about? Why are you doing that right now?
I think that overall, even though the story left me kind of cold, there were enough good episodes. It picked up, and I love the main cast. And so I certainly did not feel like the show is losing me. I'm looking forward to next season. Maybe not as much as The Flash or DC's Legends of Tomorrow, but I am looking forward to next season. And speaking of the end of the season, at the very, very end of the finale, they bring in the Monitor, who we saw in the crossover this year, Elseworlds, who brings John Jones's brother, who's a supervillain, and they bring in Leviathan, which is a DC Comics criminal organization, and that is going to be a major part of the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover in fall, because in the comics, that was a multiverse-wide crossover where they brought in heroes and everything from all the different universes in the multiverse, and when all was said and done, Barry Allen was dead and Supergirl was dead. I did not watch the Arrow finale, but I read about it. And at the end of the Arrow finale, apparently the Monitor shows up and says, "Okay, in the crossover, you promised you'd help me fix the universe, so come with me." And he leaves with the Monitor at the end of Arrow. So I'm hoping the last 10 episodes are, Arrow in space, and that could be fun. And I bet the crossover is the final episode, the 10th episode of Arrow for the season. And my guess is Arrow's going to die. My guess is that they're not going to kill off the 2 stars of their continuing CW series. They're not going to kill off the Flash and Supergirl. That we're going to see that the Arrow is going to take the fall, and then, maybe Supergirl from another Earth or whatever. Other characters we don't know yet, whatever. But I do like the way they're setting up the crossover already at the end of this season. I thought that was pretty cool.
And that's a nice segue into DC's Legends of Tomorrow, because you had the Monitor sitting back watching what they're doing, eating popcorn.
Right. And that's another great sign that I think DC's Legends of Tomorrow is going to be part of the crossover next year as well. We'll see.
They don't have to be left out and make jokes about it this next
That's
year.
right. DC's Legend of Tomorrow, it started as a show that I almost did not continue with, because first season of Legends of Tomorrow, it had a lot of potential, but it never reached it. And so I watched second season going, okay, first season, I like some of the characters and I like the actors, but I don't know, because they were trying in the first season to be Arrow, basically. They were trying to be a dark and gritty, realistic style of superhero show, which is kind of silly when you're in space and time and, everybody's doing everything. But season 4, they have really hit their stride.
Yeah, well,
it is a dramedy at this point. They lean into the comedy, and it is fantastic.
I mean, you have Mick,
right,
who's writing these bestseller romance novels, and he kind of wants to go to the romantic convention, but can't really go as himself because,
he's writing as a
female. So he has someone else be his face, and that gets blown out of the water because one of the other cast members is a fan of his,
right?
Who goes to the convention is like, wait a minute, I know it's not her. Who is it? And he expects that when they find out who he is, everyone's going to be against him. But instead, they just embrace the fact that this is their author. This is the person that's bringing them all of these characters.
And that's the theme of this show, I think.
But then you still have him wanting to borrow the book so he can write his own lover and have her come to life.
Exactly. And I think that's a great theme for the whole season, but also for the show, is they've sort of figured out, they were named Legends originally by, Rip Hunter to try and entice them into, you'll be legends throughout history. But now it's become almost a rallying cry that they're the misfits, that they're not heroes, that they're the ones who do the right thing but get it wrong all along the way. And the theme of the show is that it's okay to be a misfit, is that you can be yourself, do things your own way, get it wrong, but own it, keep trying, clean up your mess.
And then you have Gary.
Oh, he's fantastic comic relief.
And when you're talking about misfits,
right,
he thinks that all they do is make fun of him and that they don't value him. And it was really nice to see an episode where they really needed to see, wait a minute, we're not treating Gary correctly.
Right.
This is wrong. We need to admit it. We need to do something about this.
Right. Yeah, it is. I mean, Gary kind of does some very, very light, tormenting of them. And rather than getting angry and wanting revenge, they understand it.
I almost feel right now, thinking about what's happened in one season of DC's Legends of Tomorrow, that one season of DC's Legends of Tomorrow was equivalent to how much drama and story happened in both Flash and Supergirl together.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many things with each of the characters. You have the storyline between Sarah and Ava. You have John Constantine's story. You have You have Ray, realizing, or just, even though he shouldn't, he just is still in love with Nora.
Right.
And Nora, trying to redeem herself and ends up being fairy godmother and having to walk around hell in a blue taffeta dress.
Because that's the kind of sense of humor that the show has, that they will do that. They will put superheroes in crazy situations, and they will have them make meta comments about how bizarre it is.
And a lot of times with actual real life couples, they don't have the chemistry on the screen.
Right.
But there is just something just loving and adoring seeing Brandon Routh and Courtney Ford together.
Yes. And going back to Comic-Con for a second, where we saw the panel, those two had a great real life rapport in Comic-Con when they were playing off each other. And it's great to see that their on-screen persona is just as vibrant. I mean, it's the other shows. I would tell people, take it or leave it if you love the characters. Sometimes, but the seasons, maybe they're good, maybe they're not. But DC's Legends of Tomorrow is just straight up fun.
And I said this to you the other day as well. I mean, you had this entire storyline last time with his father and the father wanting to build this theme park for
Hayworld.
Building Hayworld for
magical creatures
for his son. And then also what happened to him being this, steel guy for a while. I was like, what is he still?
He's still steel. He just doesn't steel up as much anymore.
But, and then him losing his father and realizing that his father really was trying to just do something sweet for him. And you've kind of forgotten about Hayworld until that last episode when wait a minute, no, we can use this still.
Right. Yeah, and this show is not about being dark. This show is about being sweet. So everybody got their moment. He gets to reconcile with his dad. Nick gets to reconcile with his dad at the end. Nick reconciles with Zari before her timeline changes. Ava and Sarah reconcile when they were having some trouble. Everybody reconciles with Gary. It's about people coming together. It's about the misfits getting along. It's just such a positive show. This is one of those shows. It's just hard not to like it. I don't know anyone who doesn't like it. I know people who don't watch it, but I don't know anyone who regularly watches it. It's like, yeah, I don't like it. And
at one point, Sarah leaves Ray in charge. And they convince Ray, no, let's just go off and do this. Let's go off and do this.
Yeah.
And it's like kids in a candy shop.
Yeah, yeah.
Or, the parent, left the kids home and the keys to the car are right there.
Exactly. One of the things I would also say about DC's Legends of Tomorrow, I don't know quite why this is. I don't know if it's because the ratings aren't quite as high or because there's just more CG and each episode costs more. But whereas the other CW shows have 22 episode seasons, DC's Legends of Tomorrow is always shorter. I believe
but they pack a lot in there, though.
Yeah. I was going to say
they don't need a longer season.
I was going to say, I think what happens with longer seasons is you end up with a lot of shows that are filler. And I think one of the great things about Legends of Tomorrow being only 16 episodes this season, I know the first season was 13, and I don't remember what the other two were. This one is 16, but I think that it makes them be tighter. I think it forces the writers to write tighter stories, to make every minute in every episode do more. And I think it really helps the storytelling a lot. Because, some shows benefit from storytelling that unwinds slowly and has time to breathe. This is not. This is a comedy. This is an action comedy with superheroes. And it benefits from the faster it moves. And so I like the fact that there's less episodes. I think it served to help the show a lot. And I'm very excited about season 8. And, like you'd mentioned, the Monitor is in the finale. watching it all go by with a look like, first he's like, oh my God, these guys are so stupid. And then he's like eating popcorn like, okay, well, this could be kind of fun.
And you have Mona. We didn't talk about Mona
We didn't
yet.
talk about Mona.
And neither one of us were too crazy about her wolfy
Right.
werewolf look, but it's different.
Yeah. I think the look is an example of where the fact that the budget was spent on other things came in. You know, it looked a little costumey, a little in a suit. You know, but that's just me. But I thought the character ended up being quite good.
I think the whole storyline, I don't even know if was it this season with storyline with Desmond and Constantine. They actually find out a little bit more about Constantine's background.
That was this season.
Like I said, I mean, they packed so much.
Right.
If it's only 16 episodes, it seems like it was just as many, if not more, than The Flash or Supergirl because of everything that happens.
And speaking of Constantine, you got to give the writers credit because, you know, he had his own one-season show on NBC, which I enjoyed. Apparently, I was the only one who enjoyed it because it got canceled after one season. But it was, you know, your dark. It was basically Supernatural, which is funny because the creators of Supernatural said that originally they had wanted to do Constantine, but DC did not give them the rights.
Courtney Ford already did Supernatural.
Right.
She was on their first season.
So DC did not give them the right to do Constantine, and so they turned around and turned their idea into Supernatural. And so that was basically Constantine, and people just didn't respond to it. I love the character. That actor, Matt Ryan, is amazing. He owns that part. And that was a serious, dark show. And I think it speaks, and then he was on Arrow for one episode in a serious, dark episode. And I think it speaks really well to the writers of this show that they were able to integrate the serious, dark Constantine into this basically not taking anything seriously jokey action
show.
Well,
there's still a lot of seriousness to it.
Yeah.
But it's done in such a way that they have this dark and serious. There's always this light edge.
Yeah, they can move from dark to serious very, very deftly.
Like having the puppet throw a dagger or something across the room at someone.
Right.
But what was it he threw?
Yeah, the dagger threw a knife at Mona, who was trying to give everybody food. And the puppet was actually a dubuque, which is I think I pronounced it right. It's actually a part of Jewish mythology. It's a evil spirit in Jewish mythology is called a dubuque, and that's
in some ways a little scarier than Chucky.
Yeah, and that's what the puppet was. And so they have these serious moments, but then they make jokes out of them, and it doesn't feel forced. It's so natural.
It's kind of difficult to, you have this killer puppet, and he looks kind of like a Muppet.
Yeah.
So,
and you have an ogre that just wants to sing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was just such a fun episode or fun season. And I can't wait for for the next season, season 5.
Gary is great.
Gary is great. And
what was the line?
Yeah, that was it.
Gary is great. And
we don't need more than Gary or something.
We don't need anything more than Gary.
Yeah. So
Gary is all we need.
Right.
Gary is great. Gary is all we need.
So I am really looking forward to the next season of this show. This is just so fun. They've done so well because they put the monitor in it.
And they cannot let Gary have his nipple back.
That was in the first episode, Gary lost a nipple. I do think that he made his fairy godmother give him a normal nipple. So I think he does now have a normal second nipple again. Not the evil, hypnotic nipple. But, I mean, again, this is the kind of show we're dealing with where they put a evil, hypnotic nipple on someone who has an eye in his nipple.
And Legends of Tomorrow is one that
Of course, it gave away a ton of spoilers.
I had not kept up with it. I knew a lot from you what was already happening in the show and watched a couple episodes and went back and watched the first few seasons because it was entertaining.
Yeah.
And you had said, the first season's okay. But towards the end of the first season, I was really starting to enjoy it. By the second season, I was very much enjoying it.
Right.
And it's been
And the third season was when it really got its legs. The third season, it's like, okay, now we know what our show is about. And so third and fourth seasons were absolutely fantastic. And I think it's only going to get better because they know the DNA of the show now.
And the Dybbuk is Paul Reubens.
Yes, it was Paul Reubens' voice.
And Jane Carr is the one that plays the fairy godmother.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And she does a wonderful job
she does.
as fairy godmother.
Yeah. We gave a lot of spoilers away, but I think it doesn't really matter even if you haven't watched the shows because, well, if you hate any kind of spoilers, it does matter. But I think that when it comes to shows like this, it's like watching a magic trick. It's not about the trick. It's not about knowing how it's done. It's about watching the trick. And even knowing that it's funny and what some of the humor is, it's not going to take away the actual gag on screen.
No, it is still entertaining to watch, even if you know what's coming up.
Yeah. So I think we hit the CW shows. The ones in the Arrowverse. They do have another one, Black Lightning, which is not part of the Arrowverse. I've never watched it. I've heard some good things, but so many other things to watch.
Maybe one day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Golden.
You are very welcome.
And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/42. If you like this episode, please leave a review in the Apple Podcasts app or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have any comments or suggestions for subjects, panels you'd like us to do, please drop us an email at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.